Hey guys, Harrison Warren back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to episode 12 of the Online Racer Formula 1 2013 online multiplayer content featuring real-life topics from the world of Formula 1. On this episode, I consider this one the movie night special, so grab some popcorn, have a seat, and enjoy this short video while I talk about the two recent Formula 1 related movies to hit the box office. Senna from 2011, directed by Asif Kapadia, and 2013's Rush, directed by Ron Howard, that was recently nominated for 4 Golden Globes. Sadly didn't win any. I was really putting for Daniel Bruhl as best supporting actor, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's talk about Senna first. Hopefully this will be kind of like Jeremy John's videos, only not quite as much charisma and green screens and hands being everywhere and just generally being awesome. Anywho, Senna came out in 2011 and it's clearly a look at the, basically it's a career retrospective. It's more of a docu-film, basically, into the career of Ayrton Senna, as he was growing up, as he was going through karting, and his Formula 1 career, which started in 1984, and of course, as we all know, sadly ended just a decade later in 1994. It's an interesting one. I must admit, I was born in 92, for those guys that don't know. I'm 21 years old. I was born in 1992. So, growing up, I never got to experience Ayrton Senna and what he was able to accomplish in a Formula 1 car. So, even as I got older, and I got older, I realised this name, Ayrton Senna, was continuing to be thrown around an awful lot. And I never quite knew why. Like, he was known as this legendary Formula 1 driver, but I never quite knew why until I dug a little deeper and realised, okay, this is what happened. He died in San Marino in '94. He was a 3-time world champion. But that was it. That was really it until I saw Senna. I thought, okay, this is the perfect chance to see what Ayrton Senna was all about as a driver. And I left that movie cinema, like, the first time I watched it, I left the movie cinema emotional, just blown away by it, really. It is a docu-film that pretty much covers, like I said, every range of Senna's life and his entire racing career, and there's a lot of unseen footage that's never been before released to the public, and there's a lot of in-depth interviews in there as well. It is, like I said, it is pretty much a docu-film from start to finish, but it is an excellently made one. The soundtrack over the top is excellent. It makes you feel the emotion and the drama. Some of the onboard shots you see during the film are absolutely incredible, like the ones around Japan, for example, back in 1989 and 1990. Just chilling. It is amazing to see how Senna is just driving this car like at 200 miles an hour around this track like a madman, and seeing him qualify as well, like he's generally regarded as the greatest qualifier ever, and I can see why. He's just incredible stuff. Now, it's one of those things where there was so much they could have easily put into this film that they didn't actually get a chance to put in. Like, there was not a lot of stuff about his Tolman days. There wasn't a lot of real qualifying footage. There was a few Monaco bits here and there. It mainly focused from like 89 through to 94. There was a couple of jump cuts where they were cutting some years down, and you can see they were cutting some content here and there, which is kind of a shame. But I'll talk more about that in a little bit minute as well. It's an hour 45, which is actually quite a decent length for a documentary, a longer one, so to speak, because these ones can go like 2.5 hours, and you can easily get kind of bored. But I was never bored watching Senna ever. It was a heart-pumping thrill ride from start to finish, and you also got to see kind of the ugly side of Formula 1 a little bit as well, some of the political side, like what happened in Japan, with Alain Prost and the president of the FIA at the time, and things like that, and how Senna pretty much punted Prost off the road to win his first world championship. Let's be real here, that's what happened. Don't even try and pretend like it was an accident. We all know what Ayrton was thinking. And, it's weird because, like I said, I never grew up watching Senna, but seeing him like this, it answered so many questions I had in my mind about him, and it ticked pretty much every box in terms of what I wanted to know, and, how how he was perceived on in his career and how by other drivers. We also saw like the rise of Michael Schumacher as well, and you may have heard of him. How his relationship with Ron Dennis came about, and Alan Prost as well, obviously. I gained a lot of respect for Ron Dennis after watching, actually, because there was a lot of behind the scenes going on there, and I never knew what Ron Dennis had to go through with having two egotistical world champions in both his cars. That could be one for Stefano Domenicali this coming F1 season when March rolls around. But what I didn't like about Senna is that it bordered and got tantalizingly close to being a bit biased. And that's understandable because the documentary is about Senna. But I got the Blu-ray as a Christmas present a couple of years ago, and I realised there's an extended version of Senna on the Blu-ray. And on the Blu-ray is over an hour of content that didn't make the final film. And pretty much all of it is Alan Prost being interviewed. and it kind of made me wonder, was there a reason why they cut so much of Prost out of the final film? Because it felt a bit one-sided, because if you watch the pure movie for what it is, there's little from Alan Prost himself directly. It almost kind of wanted to paint the viewer like Senna was some kind of unburdened saint, when we never heard the other side of the story from Alan Prost's perspective. It kind of almost tried to make Senna look like a sympathetic figure, when in reality he probably wasn't. And he's been guilty of a lot of things in his career, Ayrton Senna, which would count as unsporting at best and flat out dangerous at worst. Like for example in Top Gear, where how Martin Brundle pointed out that he was the guy that was willing to punt his teammate off the road to win a championship, but he'd also get out of the car and help a guy out if he saw he was hurt. So it's kind of like this whole paradox of Ayrton Senna, like he was almost hypocritical in that sense, where he was willing to help his fellow driver, but if it came down to winning, he would happily punt his teammate and friend off the road in order to win something. It's kind of weird how that all balances out in the end. That Top Gear segment on Ayrton Senna, if you can find it, go watch it. It's absolutely magnificent. It's one of the best 15 minutes of film Top Gear has ever put together. But yeah, I really enjoyed Senna. It's a really great watch, and if you're a younger Formula 1 fan who never got to experience what Ayrton Senna's career was like, I highly recommend you go and see it, because go buy it on DVD or Blu-ray. It's even if you don't like Senna as a result of watching it, the footage and the soundtrack and how it's all put together is wonderful, and you have to appreciate the job that Asif Kapadia has done, and Manish Pandey who wrote it as well. All just did brilliant as well. It's a really, really well put together docu-film, one of the best I've ever seen, as a matter of fact. Moving on to Rush. Now, Rush is not a docu-film. Rush is a full-on cinematic experience. It's based off a true story, and it's based off the rivalry between Niki Lauda and James Hunt in the 1970s. Directed by Ron Howard, of course. This one is different. It's like I said, it's based off of a real life story rather than Senna, which is just a documentary which just dots the I's and crosses the T's as a docu-film. This is Ron Howard's interpretation of the story, and I absolutely loved it. Simply put, it is a wonderful, wonderful movie. One of the best of 2013. I would happily go out and say. Rush is, obviously, like I said, it's the story of James Hunt and Niki Lauda and how their rivalry shaped Formula 1 in the mid-70s. And first of all, I've got to say, Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl absolutely kill it as James Hunt and Niki Lauda. Especially Bruhl. Bruhl got all the Niki Lauda mannerisms down, the accents, the motions, the expressions. He got it so down pat, and I was like, this guy could totally be Niki Lauda, and he absolutely got it. Just being this arrogant guy that went to Ferrari, as a pay driver, and he did things his way. He wasn't intimidated or threatened or scared by anyone. He would never back down. He was always willing to speak his mind, and he was willing to break down barriers and reputations that the team had in order to succeed, and it worked for him. But then you had the rival. Niki Lauda was cold, he was calculating, You know, he was very black and white as a person, while James Hunt was more of the lavish playboy kind of character. I'm sure you guys who've read up on James Hunt already know this, but for those that don't, James Hunt was this, you know, charismatic, English, you know, chauvinizing, womanizing, drinking, smoking bad boy of Formula One that had all this charisma, all this passion, but, you know, would often get distracted by, you know, the finer life outside of Formula One rather than his ability in the car. And, you know, when Tolman went kaput, and, you know, he was begging McLaren to get the seat, you know, instead of Jackie Ickx, who, you know, was obviously a very, very strong Belgian driver, one of the best Belgians ever produced. You know, him saying, you know, oh, you know, you'll never win a world title with Jackie Ickx, but you might just win one with James Hunt. And James Hunt gets in the McLaren seat because Hunt was that determined to get an equal car to beat Niki Lauda's arse, basically. And that's where the film really goes from there. And that's when it kicks into its second act. And, you know, you see, obviously, Lauda winning early on, James Hunt trying to get in the guy's head, it doesn't work, and then you have the British Grand Prix where Hunt won but with an illegal car, and, you know, Hunt hates on Lauda for it, and then they have to rebuild the car, there's more issues, and then we get to the Nürburgring. You know, we see the scene of how Lauda is saying, I'm faster than all you guys here, but this race is too dangerous. But, you know, I'm faster than all you guys here, but, you know, I still think it's too dangerous to race. And then Hunt convinces the paddock to race. And then we see the crash of Niki Lauda. And, you know, it's graphic. It's graphic. You see, like, the operations and Lauda and getting his lungs cleared of all the ash he took in from the fire. And it's brutal, but it gets it. He gets it so right, and you see Lauda getting his lungs cleared, and you can see his head tilt backwards. You can see James Hunt winning all those races with Lauda gone, and it just motivates him to drive on. And one of the best lines of the film is when Lauda comes back in Monza towards the end of the season, to the shock of everybody in the paddock. Like, oh my God, Lauda's going to race. And then James Hunt's feeling so guilty because he convinced the crowd to race, and Lauda nearly died in the car at the Nürburgring. And, you know, Hunt apologised, saying it was wrong for him to race during there, it was too dangerous. And he said, and then Lauda said, I think he said the line of something along the lines of, as much as, you know, seeing you in all those races, you're equally responsible for getting me back in the car. And, you know, I love how the rivalry just boils down to Japan and that monsoon at the end. And, you know, you see, I'm spoiling a little bit of this for you, but if you know the story, you kind of know how it is anyway. But just the focus on the rivalry, it's like you want to root for both of them, and that's what makes the film so great. They're both characters in their own right, but their rivalry kind of completes each other, because, you know, Lauda was the cold one, you know, but he got married in between that season, and, you know, the idea of him going for it, and, you know, his will to win, the passion of James Hunt, and, you know, that attitude that he had, that swagger that James Hunt had, it kind of made him a better, more exciting person. Well, for James Hunt, that willing to win mentality and giving it everything he had to try and win was something that had eluded him in his career, and then at the end in Japan, and it all came through for him in the end. And that rivalry was so great because, in a way, those two kind of completed each other in terms of a rivalry, and that's what made Rush such a great watch. You just see these two evolve as characters and as people, and there's a lot of boobs. Can't complain about that. But I absolutely adored Rush, as you can tell from me just by talking about it. And they're both different films in their own right. I really liked Senna. I adored Rush. I thought Rush was the more enjoyable watch for me. But what do you guys think? Did you guys enjoy Senna? Did you guys enjoy Rush? Have you seen any of them, or do you want to see either of them? Let me know what you thought of either of them. I'm really interested to see what you guys thought. You know. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, as always, because you guys are always so good for opinionated stuff. And just before we go as well, thank you all for getting me to 800,000 total views on YouTube. It's been a long 2.25 years, but I just want to say thank you all so much for the support. It's quite surreal to realise your voice has been heard over 800,000 times on YouTube. It's ridiculous, and therefore I would get to this position. So thank you all so much for that. And yeah, next up, the 1 million and maybe 4,000 subs. So thanks for all the support, everybody. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Sayonara.